Welcome to the Paul Lovette Show, the show where truth meets bold patriotism as we fight for the very soul of America. I am your host, Paul Lovette, a proud and unapologetic Black American conservative. On today's show, we're looking at the mortgage fraud criminal referral from the Director of U.S. Housing and Finance Agency, William Pulte, to the U.S. Attorney General, Pam Bondi, regarding New York State's Attorney General Letitia James and alleged mortgage fraud. The referral is significant considering that James achieved a 14-count conviction against President Trump for alleged mortgage fraud and documents falsification. Below, we're going to look at a lot of the documents that shows that she affirmatively has committed mortgage fraud, and the support is there. The information against President Trump, of course, was false. The information against Trump was made up, a novel case at best. But before we go down that rabbit hole, just want to look at a story of how my wife and I got our loan. And is something you need to hold on to. So, like you or the average person, we go to a real estate agent and they take us out. We look for a home, we find a home, and next we had to get a mortgage. Or in our case, we went into the real estate agency. They had a broker on site. The broker got some preliminary information from us to start looking at numbers while we were out with our agent. She did a great job. We went to several places. We found the home that we fell in love with, a nice tri-level home. And we had the price, decided to put in an offer. Our agent called the broker and said, how much, what are they pre-approved for? Well, the amount was more than what the house cost was selling for. So it was a delightful news to get. So we get back to the agents, we get back to the real estate office. The broker pulls us over and dictates to us what information he needs. So we start the mortgage loan process, which is going to be a pain in the butt, as we all know, but there's a lot of information they need. And he tells us exactly what he needs. He basically holds our hand through the entire process so that we can get our loan. That's significant because this is the number one, the vast majority of how everyone gets their loans. The other thing is Letitia James will make a lot of excuses. Her attorney make a lot of excuses of why things were wrong with their loan documents. But we know she's an attorney, and it just doesn't hold muster. So the story is important because when Democrats and the necrotic mainstream media start spinning and downplaying James's allegations or actions, you can filter it through how people get loans. We don't dictate to the loan professional how to do his or her job. They walk us through. So it doesn't make sense what she and her attorney, Abby Lowell, is stating. So today's title is Letitia James, Mortgage Insurance Fraud, and Karma is a B, Episode 3. So I want to start by taking a look at Director Pulte's criminal referral to Pam Bondi, our U.S. AG. We'll take a look at this from a per property. In his letter, he hit one property, next property, and next property in his referral. So I'm going to highlight and discuss the black and white for each of these properties and the alleged fraud. Next, I'm going to start with discussing the loan process in light of our mortgage journey described at the beginning of the show of how my wife and I got our first home mortgage, and relate that to some of Letitia James's excuses expressed by her attorney, Abby Lowell. Abby Lowell most recently represented former President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, who was accused of illegally purchasing and possessing a firearm while addicted to drugs. Hunter Biden was found guilty on all charges. Excuse me? Wait. Apparently, Attorney General James has something to say regarding mortgage fraud and documents fraud that she wants to express. So let's break away from.
My message is clear. No matter how rich or powerful you are, the rule of law must apply equally to everyone, and it is my responsibility to make sure that it does. I am confident that justice will prevail.
Okay, not live, but we 100% agree with Attorney General James's assertion that no one is above the law. So let's move on to the criminal referral from Director Pulte to Attorney General Pam Bondi. And first up is the 604 Sterling Street, Norfolk, Virginia property. And note that at this point, the DOJ has not responded to the criminal referral, so there are no charges at this point. We will be looking at the referral itself, the mortgage documents referenced in the referral, and included in James's attorney Abby Lowell's response to the referral. And we will note that the genesis of all this is through Sam E. Antar of whitecollarfraud.com. He's a financial whiz, and by his words, he is a true felon, unlike President Trump, who was railroaded into his convictions. But a lot of this information, Mr. Antar, through his diligence, found and has brought to light. So let's bring up our first slide. And what did Letitia James, do wrong? From the referral, the criminal referral, Miss Letitia James has, in multiple instances, falsified bank documents and property records to acquire government-backed assistance and loans and more favorable loan terms. This has potentially included 1, falsifying residence status for a Norfolk, Virginia-based home in order to secure a lower mortgage rate, and 2, misrepresenting property descriptions to meet stringent requirements for government-backed loans and government assistance. So there you have the overall complaint by Director Pulte. Now we're going to move on to looking at the sub-complaints and sub-properties and the issues with those mortgage documents. So with the 604 Sterling Street property, we see here Letitia James became the New York State Attorney General on 1 January 2019. And to hold state office, you must be a resident of the state of New York. Problem 1. Problem 2 is a building permit was issued for her New York property, the 296 Lafayette, Brooklyn, New York property, and it was issued on 15 July 2024, and it shows it as the James residence and that it remained occupied. So big problem here is that comes less than 1 year after the Sterling Street mortgage was obtained. So you are not meeting that requirement of it being you being your primary residence for at least 1 year. So we have 2 layers of problems with Miss James that it's impossible to unravel what the black and white facts are. And let's step forward. And here's more evidence. This is a screenshot of the building permit that was issued on July 15th of 2024. We see Letitia James as James residence, and as we see here, remains occupied. So how does she get away from that problem? Those are glaring red flags. So my conclusion on this, and this is just looking at the facts we have presented here from mortgage documents from Director Pulte's letter, his criminal referral. And so conclusion, she is guilty on count 1, the Sterling Street property. And why? It's clear. Her New York residency, she can't be a primary resident of in two different states at the same time. Implausible. Then, of course, holding state office made a requirement. So if she does the 2023 power of attorney terminates her terminates her being the New York State Attorney General, because she signed an affidavit to say that Virginia was now her primary residence. And I don't think she's going to argue that. And also the timeline of the permit for the Lafayette residence is less than a year. So we have a violation of just standalone the Sterling Street mortgage. My research showed that at that time, for a residential loan, it must be your primary residence for a year. Otherwise, you're being charged more because it's going to be considered an additional property, or like a income property. So you're seeing the motive here of financial gain. It's my primary residence. I get the residential rate, which is lower, more beneficial as opposed to a commercial property or a investment property. Okay, now we're going to move on to count 2, the 296 Lafayette Avenue, Brooklyn, New York property. And Director Pulte, in his criminal referral, highlighted a number of discrepancies that we're going to go over here. Starting with, on January 26, 2001, a certificate of occupancy listed the property as a 5-unit dwelling. And then on February 14, 2001, Letitia James purchased this 5-unit dwelling. Miss James secured a conforming loan through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Conforming loans are only available to 4-unit or less structures. And then, spanning the last 2 decades, Miss James consistently misrepresented the same property as having only 4 units in both building permit applications and numerous mortgage documents and applications, including a 2011 application for a home affordable modification program, and most recently in 2019, mortgage refinancing through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So we have here the glaring problem of the certificate of occupancy, which is considered the gospel, as you'll see later on, for what a building's purpose is for, was issued just a mere 20 days prior to her obtaining her conforming loan with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So how are you going to be able to unwind that? It seems quite impossible to me. So let's step 1 forward here. So here's our certificate of occupancy. And note the date, January 26, 2001, 296 Lafayette Avenue, total units 5, 5-family, a 5-unit dwelling, basically. So this is just crushing here in contrast to the mortgage on 20 days later on February 14th. And those mortgage documents I was able to obtain, and as you see here, The last 2 pages of that mortgage document is this 1 to 4 family rider. And you should be able to make this out. 14th day of February 2001, like I said, 20 days later. So, and here's Letitia's signature on this document. So we're guilty of sin on this, basically, because you can't undo this. It's conjecture and emotion is the only mode of attack that you're going to possibly make on this, but in a federal court, that's going to fall far short. So my conclusion here is that, hold on here. Okay, we're going to step back. We're going to get back to that slide. So my opinion here, of course, is guilty on count 2, mortgage fraud, because, once again, January 26, 2001, certificate of occupancy was issued as a 5-unit dwelling. February 14, she gets a loan for the same property, listing it as a 4-unit dwelling. So that seems to me to be clear-cut fraud. We can't just wash that away with, oh, it's a mistake. Once again, you're going to see, or I will remind you of her MO of submitting the mortgage document to get the financial gain of a better rate, and then following up with other documents to try and cover that up or rectify the original sin, if you will. Now let's look at Director Pulte's final analysis and what specific laws he believes she has broken. So, Ms. James, for both properties listed above, appears to have falsified records in order to meet certain lending requirements and receive favorable loan terms. The U.S. Federal Housing and Finance Agency believes this and other alleged misconducts could be violations of the criminal code under 18 U.S.C. 1343, wire fraud, 1341, mail fraud, 1344, bank fraud, and 18 U.S.C. 1014, false statements to a financial institution, and or other relevant state and federal laws.
This case was brought simply because it was a case where individuals have engaged in a pattern and practice of fraud. And I will not sit idly by and allow anyone to subvert the law.
So that's Letitia from roughly a year ago at the apex of her power, utilizing the full weight of the New York State Attorney General's office to make up a crime and charge the president with, and ultimately get a 14-count conviction from a judge, not a jury. Let's not forget that. But let's make it about what Letitia is saying here. The rule of law, the pattern and practice of fraud. So let's apply that to her. 1983, her father buys a home and uses her name on the mortgage and lists them as spouses to get presumably to get a better rate. So she's getting the financial benefit. Then we jump to the 604 Sterling Street, Norfolk, Virginia property. She gives a power of attorney to her niece to purchase this home. And the requirements of that loan is that you will reside there for 1 year as your principal residence. This is 2023. Letitia James has been Attorney General of New York since 1 January 2019. So that is damning there. And then the 296 Lafayette property in Brooklyn, New York. Here we have a certificate of occupancy from January 26, 2001. And just 20 days later, Letitia James gets a mortgage for this property, and listed as a 1 to 4 unit dwelling when the certificate of occupancy clearly states it is a 5-unit dwelling. What's the big deal here? 5 units or more is a commercial, and you're going to pay greater rates, and just basically the financial terms are much harder. So by making it a 4-unit or less dwelling, she is getting a financial gain of a better rate, lower money that has to be put up, lower financial requirements. So pattern and practice of fraud, she is the textbook example for. Look it up, and her picture should be there. So I'm going to close this out. Originally, I was going to make a 1 episode, but the amount of content I presented here is, I think it's best to just go ahead and make 2 episodes. The second episode is going to drop along with this, so you do not have to wait here. And also there are big announcements that have come forward as this criminal referral has indeed culminated in Letitia James, the FBI opening up an investigation of our New York State Attorney General, Letitia James, and presumably for a pattern and practice of fraud. So until next time, thank you for being here, and remember to like and subscribe and sign up for notifications so you can keep up to the latest content that we provide, and you can help us get noticed by the algorithms. So thank you, and until next time.